Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Rizali Akbar and my partner Ayudhya Sirani. We are from Group 9 and we are here to explain to you about assessing reading. The first topic that we're gonna talk is genres of reading. In genres of reading, there are three parts that we're gonna talk. The first one is academic reading. You probably know about this because how often you use it in educational field. Right? The example of academic reading is general interest articles such as magazines and newspapers. Technical reports like lab reports in professional journal articles. Reference material such as dictionaries and others. Textbooks and theses, essays and papers, test directions, and editorials and opinion writing. The second is job-related reading. As you can see by its name, it's a genre of reading that helps in job-related things, means you must be formal. The example is message, as in phone message, letters or emails, memos like inter-office, reports like job evaluation and project reports, schedules, labels, signs and announcements, forms, applications and questionnaires, financial documents such as bills, invoices and others, directories such as telephone, office or others, manuals and directions. And the third is personal reading, a reading genre in informal way that an individual do for their personal interests, such as newspapers and magazines, letters, email, greeting cards and invitations, message, notes, lists, schedules like in train, bus, plan or others, receipts, menus, maps, calendars, advertisements like in commercials and want ads, novels, short stories, jokes, drama, and poetry, financial documents like in checks, tax forms, or loan applications, forms, questionnaires, medical reports, and immigration documents, and comic strips and cartoons. Second part is macro skills, and strategies for reading. In macro skills for reading comprehensions, it's based on first, discriminate among the distinctive graphemes and orthographic patterns of English. 2. Retain chunks of language of different length in short-term memory. 3. Process writing at an efficient rate of speed to suit the purpose. 4. Recognize the core of words and interpret word order patterns and their significance. 5. Recognize grammatical word classes like noun, verbs, and other systems like tense, agreement, and pluralization, patterns, rules, and elliptical forms. 6. Recognize that a particular meaning may be expressed in different grammatical forms. And 7. Recognize cohesive devices in written discourse and their role in signaling the relationship between and among clauses. And macro skills for reading comprehension is based on 1. Recognize the rhetorical forms of written discourse and their significance for interpretation. 2. Recognize the communicative functions of writing text according to form and purpose. 3. Infer context that is not explicit by using background knowledge. 4. From described events, ideas, and others. infer link and connection between events, deduce causes and effects, and detect such relation as main idea, supporting idea, new information, given information, generalization, and exemplification. 5. Distinguish between literal and implied meanings. 6. Detect culturally specific reference and interpret them in a context of the appropriate cultural schemata. 7. Develop and use a battery of reading strategies such as scanning and skimming, detecting discourse markers, guessing the meaning of words from context, and activating schemata for the interpretation of text. And now, strategies for reading is based on 1. Identify your purpose reading a text. The second is apply spelling rules and convention for bottom-up decoding. 3. Use lexical analysis like prefixes, roots, suffix, and others to determine meaning. 4. Guess at meaning of words, idiom, or others when you aren't certain. 5. Skim the text for the gist and for main ideas. Scan the text for specific information like in names, dates, and keywords. 6. Use silent reading techniques for rapid processing. 7. Use marginal notes, outlines, charts, or semantic maps for understanding and retaining information. 8. Distinguish between literal and implied meanings. 9. Capitalize on discourse markers to process relationships. The next topic we're gonna talk is types of reading. First, perspective. Perceptive reading is focused primarily on bottom processing. In other words, if a teacher is trying to assess this type of reading, they simply want to know if the student can read or not. The ability to understand or comprehend the text is not the primary goal at this. Second, selective reading. Selective reading involves looking at readers' ability to recognize grammar, discourse, features, and others. This is done with brief paragraphs and short reading passages. Assessment involves standard assessment items such as multiple choice, short answer, true, false, and others. Interactive. Interactive reading involves deriving meaning from the text. This places even more emphasis on top-down processing. Readings are often chosen from genres that employ implied main ideas rather than stated. The readings are also more authentic in nature and can include announcements, directions, receipts, and others. And the last is extensive. Extensive is reading large amounts of information and being able to understand the big picture. The student needs to be able to separate the details from the main ideas. Many students struggle with this in their native language. As such, this is even more difficult when students are trying to digest large amounts of information in a second language. Next is designing assessment tasks in perceptive reading. Understanding something or figuring things out is the main activity in perceptive reading. This activity usually involves the identification of words, punctuations, and others or matching pictures. Perceptive reading task is perceptive reading tasks dealing with the elements of a unit of language, such as letters, words, word, punctuation, and other graphic symbols. The focus of perceptive reading lies on the form such as recognizing the words, sentence, and punctuation rather than the meaning. Assessment of basic reading may be carried out in a number of different ways. First is reading aloud. The test taker sees separate letters, words, and or short sentence and reads sentence aloud one by one in the presence of an administrator. Since the assessment as reading comprehension, any recognizable oral approximation of the target response is considered correct. 2. Written response. The test taker's task is to produce the prompt in writing. Because of the transfer across different skills here, evaluation of the test taker's response must be carefully treated. If an error occurs, make sure to determine its source. What might be assumed to be a writing error. Example may actually be a reading error and vice versa. 3. Multiple choice. Multiple choice responses are not only a matter of choosing one of 4 or 5 possible answers, some of which are especially useful at a low level of reading, include same different circle answer, true false, choose the letter, and matching. As an example you may see, in the true false procedure might be present with same picture before. In the multiple choice picture code word identification, text taker may be seen word and then be directed to choose one of 4 pictures that is described. In the picture code items, matching word identification, matching can be effective method of assessing reading at this level. With objects labeled A, B, C, D in the picture, the test taker reads and writes the appropriate letter beside the word. The fifth is designing assessment tasks in selective reading. This category is largely an artifact of assessment formats. In order to ascertain one's reading recognition of lexical, grammatical, or discourse features of language within a very short stretch of language and have a combination of form-focused and meaning-focused objectives. Here are some of the possible tasks you can use to assess lexical and grammatical aspects of reading ability. First is multiple choice. Informed focus criteria. The most straightforward multiple choice items may have little context, but might serve as a vocabulary or grammar check. Second is matching tasks. At this selective level of reading, the test taker's task is simply to respond correctly, which makes matching an appropriate format. The most frequently appearing criterion in matching procedure is vocabulary. Following is a typical format, like the example you may see. The third is editing tasks. Editing for grammatical or theoretical error is a widely used test method for assessing linguistic competence in reading. Here is a typical set of examples of editing. 4 is picture code task. Test takers read a sentence or passage and choose one of 4 pictures that is being described, such as the example you may see. Test taker reads a series of sentences or definitions, each described a labeled part of pictures or diagram. 5. Gap filling tasks. Many of the multiple choice tasks described before can be into gap filling or fill in the blank items in which the test taker response is to write a word or a phrase. The disadvantage of this type of task is its questionable assessment of reading ability. The tasks require both reading and writing performance, thereby rendering it of low validity in isolating reading as the sole criterion. This alone indicates that such tests are better categorized as integrative procedures.
Next, designing assessment tasks, interactive reading. Interactive reading is almost like a selective task, which has a combination of form-focused and meaning-focused objectives. But interactive reading more emphasizes the meaning. There are several possible tasks you can use. The first is closed tasks. A closed task is an exercise, task, or assessment consisting of a portion of text with certain words removed, where the teacher asks the student to restore the missing words. Closed task has several types, one of which is the fixed ratio deletion. It means that every missing word is always in the second word. To better understand, you can see the example. The second is impromptu reading plus comprehension question. The most common technique for assessing reading is impromptu reading and responding to questions. So here, the teacher asks students to read a passage and answer some question technique. And the third is short answer tasks. A popular alternative to multiple choice question following reading passage is the short answer format. And the fourth is editing longer text. The previous section of this chapter on selective reading described editing tasks, but there the discussion was limited to a list of unrelated sentences, each presented with an error to be detected by the test taker. The same technique has been applied successfully to longer passages of 200 to 300 words. And the fifth is scanning. Scanning is a strategy used by all readers to find relevant information in a text. It's kind of reading a text quickly, going through a text to find more specific information from a long reading. And next is ordering tasks. This is also called the strip story technique, namely arranging a small pieces of paper with sentences on it into a sequence of story or ideas. To better understand, you can see the example. And the last is information transfer, reading charts, maps, graphs, and diagrams. This is a technique to comprehend charts, maps, graph, calendars, or diagrams. For example, students will be asked to interpret information such as reading a map to tell someone which direction to go or how far to go. Next, designing assessment tasks, extensive reading. Nation explained that extensive reading is a form of learning from meaning-focused input. Extensive reading is aimed to build student enjoyment in reading. Moreover, Patel and Previn also mentioned another purpose of extensive reading, that is, to ask students to read directly and fluently in target language. Extensive reading involves somewhat longer text than we have been dealing with up to this point. Journal articles, technical reports, longer essays, short stories, and books fall into this category. Here are some possible tasks that can be used. The first is skimming. Skimming is the process of rapid coverage of reading matter to find the gist or main idea. Assessment of skimming strategies is usually straightforward. So, the test takers skim a text and then answer the question. The second is summarizing and responding. Summarizing is one of the most common means of assessing extensive reading is to ask the test taker to write a summary of the text. The text that is given to students can be very simply worded as in the example. There are several criteria for assessing a summary. The first is express accurately the main idea and supporting ideas. The second is written in the student-own words. Occasionally, vocabulary from the original text is acceptable. The third is logically organized. The fourth is display facility in the use of language to clearly express ideas in the text. For a further interest in assessing extensive reading is the technique of asking students to respond to a text. So, it asks students to provide their own opinion on the text as a whole or on some statement or issue within it. For example, you can see in the picture. And there is a rating scale for summarizing and responding to the readings. That is 3 points for students who demonstrate a clear and unambiguous understanding of the main and supporting ideas, 2 points for students who demonstrate comprehension of the main idea but lacks comprehension of some supporting ideas, 1 point for students who demonstrate only a partial comprehension of the main and supporting ideas, and blank points for students who do not demonstrate an understanding of the main and supporting ideas. And the last task is note-taking and outlining. Finally, a reader's comprehension of extensive text may be assessed through an evaluation of a process of note-taking and outlining. Their utility is in the strategic training that learners gain in retaining information through marginal notes that highlight key information, or organizational outlines that put supporting ideas into a visual, manageable framework. Maybe that's all about assessing reading. Thanks for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.